Carrying on Saturday afternoon in Edinburgh. Thank you again for coming to this. I think this is number 6 in our series of artist talks. I'm Rob Briggs. I'm co-owner of Graystone Gallery, together with my wife Leslie, who the camera can't see because she's back over that way, and our gallery assistant Nava. So today we have got a real treat for you. I've been particularly looking forward to this. We have got 2 exemplary artists who have only recently started collaborating on works together, despite knowing each other for, I'm not going to say the number of years, ladies. I'm not going to say the number of years. A good piece of time, long enough to become very good friends and colleagues. 40. I was being pie. Never mind.
Of course, we were 10 when we started.
Yes, well, yeah, maybe a bit younger than that. So we have Gill Walton and we have Rebekah Tolley-Georgiou. I'm just going to say a little bit about each of them, and then I'll have a chat initially with Gill. We'll have a bit of conversation. Gill will say a little bit about her work, a little bit about her inspirations. We'll have a bit of Q&A with Gill herself. We'll then take a break. After the break, we'll come back. I'll be talking to Rebekah. I'm going to get them to do that chat show thing where they swap chairs and things. This is all terribly professional. We'll then have another short break, and it'll be the 3 of us talking together. If at any time you want to ask a question, please just stick your hand up or shout out, make yourself known. That's absolutely fine. There will be plenty of time to talk to both of the artists afterwards as well. So, as I say, thank you very much for coming and being our delightful audience for this afternoon. I'm going to crack on with a little bit of an introduction to Gill, and then we'll have a conversation from there. So, Gill Walton. Gill is an elected member of the Society of Scottish Artists and satellite coordinator for the whole of Scotland. She's showcased her work at prestigious galleries and exhibitions, such as the annual SSA exhibitions, and her work can be found in collections worldwide. Living and working from her Edinburgh studio, Gill's sculptural paintings depict the human form. She layers graphite pencil with beeswax, metal, and other precious elemental materials. Her process echoes the layering of emotions, using the human figure as a mechanism for reflecting our own internal worlds. So Gill, welcome. Thanks for coming along this afternoon. Thanks for making the trip up here. Can you tell us maybe a little bit more about your work, your style, your influences?
Okay, I'll start by talking about the 2 behind me actually. So this is a brand new series. I call it the Reliquary series. It took me a bit of practice to say reliquary, I can tell you. They are based on medieval reliquaries from about the 1100s or 1200s. So the medieval reliquaries, they were usually carved out of wood, and they were usually figurative people, usually women, usually very saintly, pious women, and they often had little cupboards in their heads or cupboards in their chests. So they had hands that could actually open up these little cupboards, and you'd see the fingers holding onto the doors, which I find quite a mind-blowing concept, opening up a cupboard into your own insides. It's quite a giving away thing, and it's quite, opening up and revealing things. So they're quite remarkable objects. These reliquaries from medieval times usually held sacred objects like bones of saints, so they were actual. I think it was very important, as it is in mine, that they hold these actual sacred objects, real objects. So they're just fascinating things, and I thought I would take these reliquaries and reimagine them for future times. So my reliquaries are holding things that could possibly be lost, or quite likely at this rate be lost in the future. So biodiversity, mainly insects, bugs, butterflies, beetles, and it's just like in those medieval reliquaries, it's very important to me that they hold the actual mini beasts, actual butterflies. So this one is a mile-long swordtail butterfly. The one above has got a damselfly in it, and in her forehead, third eye place, there's a bee. So it's also very important to me that any insects or bugs that are held within the reliquaries have been sourced properly, so they died of natural causes, because actually the whole point of these is to hold sacred these wonderful, magnificent beasts that we might lose. So, they are precious and should be honoured and revered. So the bee, for example, hopefully it had a lovely, happy, long life, but it died on the windowsill in my studio, and I found it in my studio. The damselfly was, I had a pond that had dragonflies and damselflies, and this was one that I found, because they only last a season, and then they usually find a nice shady sheltered place to go and die. And so I found, both of them were found. This one was gifted to me, and I think it's a very old vintage specimen, that one, the swordtail, but it's absolutely beautiful. So the vial in the archway here is representing meltwater, so icebergs melting away. So you can tell what the work is about, but they are very. I find that they are just positively honouring and holding sacred things that are amazing and beautiful and wonderful. So why put them in a person or body? Well, I think we've got 2,000 years of tradition of figurative work and usually women, actually, women's bodies, faces, heads being used to represent other things. There's a whole history of tradition, whether right or wrong, and reclaiming that, reappropriating the use of female form to represent something now. So it harks back to medieval times, it harks to the future, and now, I think. So materials-wise, they all start off as a drawing, and a pencil drawing, usually a very, very sharp pencil. I never thought, it's only fairly recently that I've been doing very detailed, sharp pencil drawings. But then I layer beeswax into the pencil. I started doing this during the pandemic because I was looking for materials that had healing properties, and I did a series of work during the pandemic based on breath and breathing, and beeswax is known for its healing properties. And I laid in silver leaf because silver leaf is antimicrobial, antiviral, so that was very appropriate for that time with the breath series. But I love that way of working. I love what the beeswax does to the pencil. It gives it a feeling of fleshiness, but it also gives it a feeling of being carved out of wood, perhaps, which again harks back to those medieval reliquaries. And it just makes it something else, something other than just a petrol, softer, more fleshy feel to it. And these have got gold leaf in them because gold has been used for centuries to highlight when something is very precious. So, all those gold halos around the Virgin Mary, etc. So it just highlights when something is precious and to be honoured and to be revered, which works with what I'm trying to do with the insects and the beasts. Is that enough?
That's enough. No, what I'm interested in is just if I can take you back that's your current work at this moment in time. I'm going to save talking about the joint compositions until we've had a word with Rebekah as well.
Yes.
But what I'd like you to talk about a little now, please, Gill, is what's led up to this point. I mean, you've spoken about the near history of how you've got to these kind of works. But I think I'm right in saying you started off focusing on sculpture, is that correct?
Yes, my degree, where we met, as undergraduates at Art College, I was doing a degree in sculpture, Rebekah was doing a degree in printmaking at that time. And I started off as a sculptor, and most of my early pieces were sculptures. A lot of my past work has been sculpture. These, you could say, have a very sculptural element to them because they are three-dimensional. They're not just on the two-dimensional plane. They go back. They are crafted and cut, and I also like to think of my way of drawing is like sculpting because I'm adding graphite, charcoal, whatever, in this case graphite, and then I use a rubber to take it away. I add another layer, take it away. So it is like modelling, adding and taking away. And I think a lot of sculptors' drawings do have that quality, a very three-dimensional quality. So these particular ones, they are, they're based on sculptures. They have a sculptural hopefully three-dimensional feel to them, very modelled three-dimensional aspect to them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I'm lucky enough to own a piece of your work. Not on this series, I have to say. But one of the things that drew me to it was this concept of inner world. So we'll talk a little bit later about the relationship between the viewer and the piece of art.
Yeah.
But in the case of your drawing, if you like, in particular with the graphite, the way in which you depict female faces, I'm not seeing any male faces you may have done.
I do them. Yeah, I do.
Any volunteers? But the way in which you depict faces, it often seems to me that your subjects are deep in thought. They seem to be gazing into the middle distance somewhere. I think it's quite clear from looking at both of these that the piece at the top there, you can see that the eyes are slightly downcast. This piece here, the lips are slightly parted and the eyes are gazing off into this. I wonder if you could shed some light on how you decide what kind of pose to go for. What are you trying to convey through using these particular poses? So
I think in these pieces it's very important that they're not engaging directly with the viewer. You get a different feel, you get a relation. If there's a face looking straight at you, it's a very different dialogue that you have, a very direct thing. But with this, it's you can sort of put yourself in them more, I think, because they're gazing away. It's not a confrontational thing. It's more of a. They are thinking about something. You can see that they are thinking about something. And that leads you into thinking about what are they thinking about, what sort of emotion is going on, and quite often you take what you're thinking and feeling to that. It's a difficult thing to put into words, but obviously as well they refer to the kind of religious iconography of reliquaries, and that those do normally have a very downcast, pious look to them as well. So
that's very interesting. Yeah. Thank you. And again, I'm just sorry, I keep turning away from the camera. But never mind. The other thing I'm interested in, the dress that they're wearing. So the kind of almost like headscarf or hood that the lady at the bottom is wearing. The necklace, And I appreciate that you've got the bee in what seems to be a sort of, I'm not quite sure what you call that piece of jewellery that hangs down on the forehead there. Perhaps you could let us know. What made you choose these? They look like a certain time period. They look almost medieval, which I guess fits in with the theme, but
so
why these dresses?
I tried to get something that harked back to medieval times, but could also be worn now. So headdresses. The good thing about headdresses is they cover up hairstyles. Hairstyles tend to put a person in a particular time. So headdresses cover that up, and it could be, it could be worn now. I mean, and head coverings as well. They have that sort of religious thing. I gave her a tattoo, which is very now. But the headdress could be any time. So there's a bit of ambiguity going on with the clothes and the headdress. I don't know what that's called, a bit of jewellery hanging over the third eye, but where the pieces are inset, I try and put them in places that are quite significant. So third eye and over the heart. Really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Talking about that, you've got a bee in the inset over the third eye.
Yes.
Why a bee for that? You explained the titles of each piece, but what drew you to putting a bee in that place there?
And a bee, well, partly it's what I find and have without, and so I did find the bee. But bees are one of those things that really have been highlighted in recent times about, we're in danger of losing bees and things. So it's very, they are amazing creatures that we should be honouring. There's not enough room on a title to put
bee
both
and
bee and amplify. So, yeah.
Okay, good. I just want, I know I keep going back, but I'm curious to understand your shift from working in sculpture, the type of sculptures that you made, and then how you moved from sculpture into drawing. I appreciate drawing would already be part of the process, but you shifted your focus.
I have shifted a lot. I have. I mean, I've got a lot of modelled pieces, not always figurative. So my very first exhibition was in 1987, my first one-woman show at the Axiom Centre in Cheltenham. It was a big exhibition, and it was based on butterfly collection. It was called a Butterfly Collector, and it was abstract pieces. It was based on ink-blocked Rorschach tests, butterflies, and I was thinking about Victorian collectors, and I was thinking about all the things that butterflies symbolise. They could be the soul, they could be sexuality, they could be freedom. I mean, they symbolise all sorts of things in different cultures, but I was thinking about how the Victorians would pin them. And so this exhibition was based on all these Rorschach tests and Victorian collections. Some of them were 11 foot wide, some of them were teeny tiny. I had one called What the Butler Saw, I think it was, which was referencing an academic piece of writing at the time, but it was a little peephole in a box, and you look through the peephole. And there was a tiny little Rorschach in there, of a red butterfly Rorschach in there that you peeped at. So butterflies have been a thing. Rorschachs have been a thing, because I know a couple of years ago I did a big drawn piece of a dancer. In fact, I think Leslie had it in a previous exhibition. It was two dancers, and I drew them exactly the same, but mirror image. So they were like a Rorschach butterfly piece as well. So themes keep coming back. I used a lot of copper in brass. Couldn't afford gold then, but I used a lot of copper and brass in previous sculptures. Did a lot of shell forms and ammonite forms and things like that. But there are things that just keep coming back in different ways, in unexpected ways throughout. Obviously, it's been a fairly long career, But and so these things do keep cropping up in different and weird and unexpected ways throughout the work that I do. So
That's great.
do you know, that's one of the really amazing things about being an artist. It's so exciting because you never know where it's going to take you next. you could be doing something radically different. At one point in my career, I was doing 8-foot sculptures made out of chocolate, of calla lilies.
Oh, edible?
Yes, because they were on rice paper. So it was in a gallery for a month, so I wouldn't have eaten it afterwards. But yes. So yeah, you never know where things are going to take you.
I think what would be wonderful, you're really inspiring me with this conversation. This is something I couldn't do, but I would love to see a future exhibition of your work displayed as a Wunder cabinet, a cabinet of curiosities.
That's another thing I love, that theory, that idea of cabinet of curiosities. Yes,
that would be wonderful. I'm still, I'm sorry, I'm going to press you though on the transition between sculpture into drawing. When did that happen, and what?
Oh, I can tell you exactly when that happened. It's when I had young children. It's when I had young children, and I couldn't leave them to go and work on big sculptural pieces, and because the sculpture is a process, takes time. Quite a lot of the processes of making sculpture, you can't if you're in the middle of casting, you can't put it down and go and leave it. To look after children. So that's when I stopped sculpting, started drawing and painting, because you could have something set up on the edge of the kitchen table and still watch the children.
Okay.
So that's when. And I've done bits of sculpture since, and I am very keen to start doing more, because I'm getting a bigger studio space made just now. So watch this space, there will be more sculptures coming.
And she's good, she's really, really good. I have some of her early pieces. Yeah.
So I think we had a few questions we've worked out beforehand. We've already coasted over a couple of those, not directly as we put them down, but the one I want to touch on now is in terms of influence. Who influences you? And the follow-up to that is why?
Right, that's a massive question, huge.
Boil it down to top three.
Top three. So there are a lot of contemporary sculptors that I really like Anthony Gormley, Bruno Wolpath, that not many people will have heard of, but he does wooden carved human-sized humans, and they are stunningly beautiful, poetic, emotional, poignant pieces, gorgeous. Going back a few hundred years, I really like Baroque portraiture. Mm-hmm. So Baroque, again, it's Van Dyck, a lot of society portraits of royals, etc. But there's a lot of symbolism in those. A lot of symbolism that leads to narrative and stories and things, and that's what I love. Also, in that big umbrella of Baroque are people like Vermeer. So, again, very narrative paintings tell a story. But I hate to compare myself to Vermeer, obviously, but like him, in fact, the Dutch had a word for it. They called them tronies. It's a very ugly word for something that's very beautiful. But Girl with a Pearl Earring was a trony. The Mona Lisa was a trony. So they are paintings of a person, but they're there to convey an emotion or a state of being or a mood, and not be a portrait of the person. I think there's been analysis done of the Girl with the Pearl Earring, and she couldn't exist as a real human being. She doesn't have facial hair, things like that. Yet she's one of the most human paintings that we have out there, because her expression is so ambiguous that everybody goes to her with their own stuff, and they put their own stuff. That's again something we've talked about a lot and will come up again. But you put your own self into her. And then going even further back, then it's the medieval religious iconography that's again contains so much of what it is to be human and spiritual, and so much worship has been poured into those things. They have such a lot of meaning and weight for us. So.
Who was the girl with the pearl earrings? This is a question that perplexes people. A mistress, do we think? Is it somebody that he shouldn't have been painting?
People have written books about that, haven't
they?
They
have. They have indeed. The other thing I found interesting about Girl with the Pearl Earring, if you look at the picture carefully, the earring isn't attached.
No, I know. This is what she's not real. She's
got a floating earring.
Yeah.
That's good. Thank you. Let's just have a quick time check. Okay, well, we'll go on for another sort of 5 minutes or so, and then we'll take a quick break, ladies and gentlemen, if that's okay with you. So, let's talk a little bit about collaboration now. We won't go too much into it because that's what we're going to pick up on later. But you guys have known each other for multiple years.
Yeah, we were just talking in the cafe before we came. That we were talking about our first exhibition, and I was saying, mine was Bachelors of Art exhibition at Stroud's subscription rooms. And she said, so was mine. We'd forgotten we were in the same exhibition.
So there's a group show we had actually. I was in that one.
So we've known each other a long time since being undergraduates together. So
you're on different courses though, and how did you actually get to meet?
Well, I think, it wasn't a massive campus. We were on a dedicated art school campus.
Yep.
And obviously we were in the same year, so we were, our paths would cross.
Yeah.
And I think you just gravitate towards certain people. So I actually redid a year. I was ill for a while, so I had to redo a year. And I actually... And so we ended up, because same thing happened to you, so we ended up at the same finishing point. And then we just, straight out of college, we were just in each other's lives, and
running through it over the last, we've lived in across continents for some of that time. There have been times when we've lectured at the same colleges. So we've gone off and had very, very different careers. But 2 years ago, we did a residency together at Marchmont House.
3 years ago.
Was it 3 years ago? Oh, time flies. But, so we did a residency at Marchmont House. And we were working on different things there, but that's when the conversation started about, let's actually start doing some work together.
Yeah.
After
only 4 decades.
Yeah. I think it takes that long before you feel comfortable enough to let somebody else touch your own stuff, So.
Well, we've had, lots of people that we know, artists and non-artists, have said, although I think everyone's an artist, have said, I don't know how you can do that. How can you do that? I wouldn't be able to do that, And I think for us it's been a very natural process. It's been a very enjoyable process. I feel like it's quite theatrical as well. It's performative art really, because you each work on your separate elements, and then you come together. You come together, and you're working around each other as you're working on this piece together. So this and this, so it's intense, but it's joyful, isn't it? We've laughed a lot.
We have.
We've laughed a lot.
Yeah.
It has been very intense. We've brought all of our life experience and our knowledge of each other and each other's practice, which, like you say, is different. We have different practices, and but they all kind of just collide very happily, and. I think that's hopefully borne out in the work, when people see the work. So, but I do think it's a dance. We dance around each other when we're doing it. Sometimes literally.
Yeah, we've got a good playlist.
We've got a very good playlist.
So Rebekah, just before we go to the break then, tell the ladies and gentlemen of the audience what you see in Gill's work. What attracts you? You mentioned you've got a few pieces of Gill's at home already.
Oh, I do. Yeah, I do.
What is it that you see in Gill's work that appeals to you?
I enjoy the narrative. I mean, I think she's incredibly skilled. I respect her as an artist. I think, at a very basic level, she's a technically brilliant artist. But I also respect her storytelling. I enjoy the narratives, and I think it's because I know her so well that I kind of it's like an osmosis thing. I kind of get it.
Yeah.
I get where she's coming from, and having known her life and her story, and she's known mine, and it's like it's just a very symbiotic relationship, and I just really respect her. I really respect her.
That is
love her as well. Love her, but respect her.
That's a lovely place just to take a quick 5 minutes, stretch your legs, we'll come back and we'll focus on you, Rebekah. And then after that we'll have a conversation with the both of them. Thank you.
Thank you.